everybody, it's Franny, and today I want to walk you through our setup for a live stream. Now, we just finished our monthly live stream and we still have all the equipment set up, so I've got Heidi behind the camera and she's going to help zooming in on things, and we're going to try and go over, it's a kind of a crazy setup, so we're going to try and detail all of our setup. Let me give you an overview of what we do. We run 3 different cameras. So we have our Lumix G85, which is what you're viewing this on right now. We have a little Sony Action Cam over here and a little handheld rig that we can use. And then we also have a camera inside the actual laptop itself. They usually have those sort of webcam-y things. And we use all 3 cameras. Now, getting the images out of the cameras and into the computer is a little daunting, but I'll show you how that's done. We'll use the Sony here as a good example. So this little guy is just one of the little Sony Action Cams, and it has, the reason we use it is it has motion stabilization on it built in, which is kind of nice. It also has, up here, is an HDMI micro output. And then down below it is our USB 3, I believe, and it's a power connection. So this camera is powered continuously. We're not relying on the batteries for it, which is great. And we've got our signal coming out with audio. So it has a good microphone on the front. We put a little dead cat on it. And it will mix the audio and the video together and send it out via the HDMI cable. So I mentioned we have 2 external cameras. So we have 2 of these boxes. Now what these are Elgato HD60S video converter boxes. So what they do, which is really, really cool, is they take the HDMI output from the camera and they convert it to USB 3. So we've got our HDMI in and it converts it to USB 3, and this is what we can actually plug into the laptop. We have 2 of these things and we sort of tape them together so that they don't wander off. But this little guy here does all the video processing for the signal with the video and the audio so that the computer doesn't have much to do at all. And that's critical so that the CPU on your laptop isn't going crazy trying to render all this video. We try to get these cameras, and we do. We actually stream at 1080p, so it's a decent amount of processing that has to go on with these things, and they're actually kind of warm. They're not super expensive. They're like $160, $170, something like that, $160, $170 or so. So not particularly expensive, but you'll need 1 for each camera. As I mentioned, we use 2 external cameras, and then we have the camera actually on the laptop itself here. So let me run you through the connections. This is our main shooter here. This is a Lumix G85. And luckily it has over here, it has an HDMI output on it. And then it also has our audio. So this gets a little confusing. So this is our Rode wireless microphone guy, and the other side of it is here, which I have with a mic. But so the problem with a lot of these setups is that you get a huge amount of echo because the microphones are coming in from different sources and they're being processed at different times on the laptop. So that sets off the sync really bad on these things. They're all messed up. So what we do is we take the wireless out of the Rode, and then we go into a splitter, and then that goes into the camera, and then the sound coming out of that will come out through the HDMI output out of the camera, and then we plug in a second microphone. This would be the one that Heidi would use into that splitter so that the audio is definitely locked and synced. That's super duper important, otherwise you're going to get echo all over the place. Because the microphones can always, we record in our garage, so each of the microphones can hear the other person. So you'll get all this echo. It's a big old mess. So that's why we do it this way. And it's pretty simple other than that. You pretty much just plug in your little micro HDMI cable into the side of this thing, and the Lumix goes, oh great, okay, cool. So I will output the HDMI. So it's right here. The only problem is that it does sort of block this screen a little bit. So if you're using this as a monitor while you're recording, then that's kind of a problem as well. So I want to take the Lumix off the tripod here, and I want to show you something that's kind of cool. Normally the battery goes in this compartment down here on the Lumix, but we have actually a wire coming out of it. So there's a sort of a fake battery that's inside here and has a wire coming out of it, which is really neat. And then that is here and goes down to a transformer that we have down here. So the cool part is that this thing can now run indefinitely on that power. So it's just completely externally powered. So you don't have to worry about your batteries dying all the time, because that could be a thing. I mean, that Lumix is a great camera, but its battery only lasts maybe 20 minutes, 30 at the very most. Having that external battery hook up on the bottom of it is a lifesaver. So your computer is your control station. And so the kind of the strange thing about this is it's really broken up into 2 bits. There's, think of it this way. Think of it as like a broadcast studio, and then think of it as the actual broadcast towers. So YouTube is more like the actual towers. So they're what's actually transmitting the signal, but you've got to produce a signal for you. So you've got all your cameras going, and you've got to pull it all together. And there's a really cool software package called OBS. And what it does is it will pull all your cameras together, pull all the image together, and then it will send it out to YouTube. So YouTube doesn't actually composite all the images together. That was kind of a weird thing for me. So let me show you a bit about this OBS software and how we have ours configured and how you sort of set things up. So looking at this software here, this is sort of the main screen here. On the main screen, we've got 3 of our cameras rolling here. So we've got, let's see if I can do, so this one here, right here, this screen right here is from the actual laptop. The one up here is actually from our Lumix G85. And then this one down here is that little handheld Sony rig I was showing you before. So dropping this, so this is just sort of a preview screen, but looking down here, we've got 2 boxes here. We've got one for scenes and one for sources. Now under sources are the actual sources. So you've got your laptop web camera, my Sony, the G85. We were actually using an external mic. Any sources that you've got associated with a scene, they probably should have put these in different order. Under the scenes, you can build different scenes based on different sources. So we always show our little bumper up at the top when we're rolling through all of this. That's the first thing we show. And then we can come right back to, once we fade out of that, to the big main screen here. And so this big main screen is off of the laptop. And then as Heidi is kind of controlling everything here, we can switch between the different scenes. So this one would be the G85 and back in the laptop as well, and then the G85 only, the Sony only, the Sony and Heidi small, and then let's see, the Sony and G85 small. So we have a bunch of these things all set up. In addition to the different screens, which is kind of fun, we have, there's all 3 of them. We also have a couple of title screens that we can throw up if we need to for different things. Like if you could, the great example for this is if you have to go potty, you can put up one and just say, "Be right back." Then there's an all cars slideshow, and that's kind of cool. And then the last one is our "Please stand by," and we actually even have, you can kind of see it going here. We have some music going on. So once you can set up different sources here by just right-clicking and say add a source, and you've got all these different sources you can add: video capture devices, audio inputs, and images, slideshows, media sources, all sorts of cool things. So each one of these sources is just one of those, and I just renamed it, and they're just assigned to whatever they need to be. Awesome. Now you also have transitions. So you may have noticed when I switched from that, it slid down, then the G85 slides sideways. You can also set up scene transitions as well in between each one of your scenes. That's a super cool feature. It looks really, really pro when you do that. And then over on the far right are your controls. You're going to need to go through your settings. So the settings, oh my gosh. Now there's a lot of videos out there that will show you how to set these things up properly. But there are a lot of settings. There's general settings here, which is just sort of the look and feel of the thing. But the stream settings, you've got a stream key here that's specific to your YouTube channel, and that's why it's always hidden. The URL here is the URL from YouTube that it's going to send the information to. And then on the output, you've got different things up here. You get streaming, recording, audio, replay buffer. Under streaming, you can play with these settings a bit, but we have an NVIDIA card inside the laptop, so we use the NVENIC or whatever, H264. That works pretty well. We rescale our output to HD 1920 by 1080. Control rate of CBR. Now here's the bit rate, this 6000 here. Now this is a very important number. You want to be very careful and check your upload speed of your intranet. So the intranet, we had to actually upgrade our service because the intranet service that we had was an upload of just 5 meg, and we found that was just too slow. It really was. So we had to speed it up a bit. Then we got 10. 10 worked pretty well. So this number that I have here on the screen, the 6000 that's here, is a little bit below the maximum bit rate that that our internet does, which is 10. So, and this seems to work pretty well. We seem to be able to stream 1920 by 1080 at a bit rate of 6000 works pretty well. This keyframe interval, I can't remember what some of these settings are. We have it set to 2. And then the rest of the stuff is pretty standard stuff as well. The GPU we have set to 0 and B frames set to 2. Once again, you can play with those if you want. Audio tracks. The audio tracks up here, in fact, I can't remember exactly what it is because our audio actually comes through the HDMI from the cameras. So it's not really a thing. Works out pretty well. The rest of this sort of stuff that's in here, your output, your audio, you can set your sample rates on your audio if you've got a bunch. Each one of these has audio associated with it. So you can set this sort of stuff up. The video here, we have our set to the resolution, like I said before, the 1920 by 1080 and kind of 30 frames a second. It's just kind of what we do. So that's pretty simple stuff. You can set up hotkeys, which are kind of cool, where you can hit a certain key on the keyboard and it will just activate whatever you want. We don't really have that set up. And then let's see if there's anything else here with the advanced. I don't think I really set much up with this. Didn't want to fuss with any of this sort of stuff. Okay, so those are the settings and the settings we use, and feel free to, of course, back it up and stop it and take a look at it if you need to. The mixer, which I didn't really show, you can see my voice is going up and down here on the G85. So we have all of the audio going through the G85. You can actually turn that off if you want by just clicking this. It'll mute it. And then you can click that to turn it back on. You have a little setup button here where you can kind of set up properties and audio properties. The advanced audio properties. Now these boxes are always way too small. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is your monitor and output. If you're going to be monitoring these audio sources via headphones plugged into your laptop, you're going to want to make sure that you've got this set to monitor and output. So you've got monitor off, monitor only, mutes the output, or monitor and output. So otherwise, you just won't hear any of the audio coming out of your stuff. You can also set, there's an offset sync. If you need to set a millisecond offset, if you are using multiple mics and you do find that you've got some weird echo, I think you can set these things and set delays. So find whichever one is ahead of ahead, and then delay it back to the slowest ones. And in theory, I guess if you played with this enough, you could probably get it to not do that. The way we got around it was to run the audio through one camera at a time. So instead of trying to have audio plugged into the laptop, audio plugged into this camera and into that camera, it just becomes a big old mess. And then the problem is that the mics plugged into all of them can hear all the sound from that the other mics can hear, and now you get these echoes. So we, as I showed before, do everything out of the Lumix, and then it comes out through the HDMI and comes into the laptop. That way, the audio sort of, in a sense, it's synced before it ever even comes into the computer. All right, great. So that's the thing about the audio. I'm trying to go through this fairly quickly. Now, you'll also notice on the controls over here, a start streaming, and you can also record with OBS, which is kind of cool as well. And there's a studio mode and some other settings. You're going to need that settings because that's, like I showed you before, is how you get to your key. Now, over on the YouTube side, now this is our Creator Studio Stream Now-y thing page here. You've got a bunch of things you need to set up. So you're going to have, let's see, so basic information here. As you roll down, you've got a title here and a description, so you want to fill all that stuff out. You've got categories, and if you're going to test, the best way to test this is just to set up a private stream. Go ahead and run through the whole process, record it as a private stream, and then YouTube will go ahead and post it up to your account, which is great. And it will be private, no one will see it. So that's like you messing around trying to figure out all the different stuff. There's a chat window here, and then your encoder setup down here. So see how the stream name key has been blanked out, which is great, because once somebody has that key, if you show that key, anyone can then use your channel to live stream. So be very, very careful about that key and don't let that out of your sight. And then the server, that server was also on the OBS in the setup. So going back to the settings and then on OBS, going to the stream, there's that URL. That's the same URL, and there's your stream key. So that's how OBS is locked to YouTube. Awesome, great. You'll also get some analytics, stream health, and things when it's actually live. There's some other tabs here. You've got a stream options. You can set up for, we just say low latency. I kind of use the defaults on this stuff. There's monetization. If you want to monetize, you can set up the super chat and all that sort of stuff. And you can also, I think you can actually add cards to it as well. And then when you're rolling, there'll be another button here as well that for the like control center, the live stream control center. And that will bring you back pretty much to a page that looks a lot like this. You've got your chat over here. This is when people are sending you messages. It'll roll in here. One of the cool things about this is if you click the little ellipses over here, you can pop this out. And so you can set up your live chat here, your chat window here off to the side, which means you can then go ahead and minimize the YouTube window and come back to here, to your OBS. Now OBS also has one other really cool trick under its sleeve. So I showed you all the different scenes. Now check this out. This is really cool. So you can let's see. So it's under view, and you can go to multi-view. And you can either do it full screen, we just generally do it windowed, and this looks teeny weeny and useless, but you can actually make it much, much bigger. So, there we go. You can make this quite a bit bigger. A little hard to work with this. There you go. There we go. And look at this. So we can actually switch. We can do a preview, and we can see the actual scenes before we even change to them. So this is really neat, and you can go back through each one of them, and here's our bumper up here that we used in the beginning, and then we went out to the Heidi cam, and then we went to the G85, and you can just go through each one. And this is live. When you click this, that's what your viewers will actually see. And you're like, oh no, I just want to, now I need to go to the Sony and the G85 as a little screen in screen. So there's the little, let's see, so this one is there we go. And then this camera up here, and you can see them. It's kind of neat. It's really kind of cool. So you've got this. You may have to go back to this now and then if you need to hit the start streaming or stop streaming or whatever your controls over here. On a laptop with just one screen like this, it's a bit of fuss to try and get your chat window in the right place, your preview, multi-view thing going and all that, but you gotta get used to it once you kind of get it set up. So that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Lighting is a huge deal. We shoot in a pretty dark garage, so lighting is a big deal. And then communication. So we do this with 2 people, and it works really well because Heidi can call out, she can monitor the base station here. She can call out and say, oh, there's a question that came in. They wanted to know if meh. And then I can go ahead and answer that as I'm working on something. So it's probably best to have somebody right here working the station the whole time and monitoring the cameras. And God forbid, now here's the big deal. So God forbid one of these cables gets pulled out on the cameras or out of the laptop itself. And you're like, oh my gosh, and you fiddle with it and you throw it back in. That's great. Then you look at your monitor and one of your cameras is blank. It's dark and you're like, ah! So what happened? Well, it does get a little confused sometimes. And if your, let's say your Sony went blank or something on you, you can right click on this, say properties, and it will pull up the properties for that particular source. Now this will be blank on you. Here's all the possible devices you could use for it. You just need to set it to one of the other devices and let it sit for a second and reset itself, and then back to the one it should be, which is this one, and hopefully it will come back up. Well, I hope this was helpful to you. I know it wasn't car related. We'll have more car related on the next video. So thanks, and until next time, safe travels. Bye.